may know how to take rejection. You may not harass women. You may know how to take rejection. The majority of men that most women deal with do not.
Yeah.
And you are accountable for that as well. Because I don't got time to figure out which white people are nice, which white people aren't racist, or I have to go on the actions of the group.
Right.
The group as a whole and the history of that group as a whole tells me that they are a danger to me and they are not to be trusted.
Right.
And if you can understand that as a black man and your stance towards white people, then you should absolutely be able to understand women's stance towards you. It's not a war on you waged by women. Actually, the war get a little thicker when we start talking about it from the perspective of a woman and the greater society of racism and white supremacy being waged against black people, and then the patriarchal society being waged against women. So they have to deal with two elements. One of those elements we don't have to think about. And honestly, we're perpetuated. And it's perpetuated against us young to look at women as objects.
Right.
You know, to look at women only through the lens of a sexual desire and not as the human being that they are. And when you understand how to deal with women on a human level, you understand how much women will enrich your life.
Amen. Amen.
You want to turn it up a notch?
Yeah.
Get you a good woman get you a good black woman in your corner.
Amen.
Hey man, you want to see your life turn up?
Hey.
And see, this is the thing though. It's a privilege, bro. It's a privilege. You know what I'm saying? We often disregard the power of our black women. The spiritual essence that they're gonna bring to things, the knowing, the seeing, you know what I'm saying? Also, too, imagine it. They have to be hyper vigilant because they have to be constantly scanning the room, making sure that they're in a safe situation.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? When we think about these kids who were clearly in Louisiana having the time of their fucking life because they graduated, and we think about white people's reaction to Black joy.
Oh yeah, that's
it's not about civility. It's not about decorum. They don't like to see us happy.
That's what it is.
Now, how often are women just having a good time, and here come a nigga trying to ruin their fun?
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. You can call it pandering, but if I was up here caping for white women, you wouldn't even mention that word. If I was up here caping for Hispanic women, you wouldn't even call it pandering. Only when we take pride and show love to black women do you call it pandering. Get your motherfucking mind right. Use your cabeza.
All right, so let me make sure I'm not muted. All right, should be good. So the first thing that kind of jumps out to me when I watched his podcast, because I didn't want to form my opinions based on just a clip, because I've been misclipped as well, right? I've been misunderstood and misrepresented by people who just viewed clips. So I wanted to watch the whole thing, and the first thing that stood out to me is like his podcast format is similar to Cam Newton's podcast on YouTube, right? It's him and I think his homeboy's name's Peggy, and it's really it's like Cam Newton monologuing and then his co-host just like being a hype man or like tossing him softballs. And this, Eggs and Grits podcast is kind of similarly formatted. And I thought that was interesting. I'm curious why. I'm also curious why people are attracted to that frictionless, I think intellectually simple style of engagement. It's monologuing, without having to like defend it. It's just like it's like a curated echo chamber, right? And one of the things I wanted to curate with this channel which is why I like to open up the streams after the introductions or even the beginning of it before I was doing streams, but I was interviewing people. It's like, let's get to the bottom of it. Let's get to a middle ground. Let's dissect the nuance. Let's just not talk in a way that makes me sound good or makes you sound good, right? But for whatever reason, I'm finding that this style of delivery, I think, especially amongst feministic oriented individuals, is very popular. You have people like the dude with the dreads with color in it. What's his name? Can't remember his name off the top of my head. Or people like FD Signifier, for instance. I appreciate aspects of it, but I'm just curious about that piece. Another thing that stood out to me, he during a segment of his podcast, he talked about how, at the age of 27, he was on cocaine, right? So he comes from a certain lifestyle. He's an individual who has lived some life, and I think is speaking from that perspective, and I think is representing or prioritizing a certain subgroup of the Black community that, in my opinion, is overrepresented and harmfully so. Right? I saw a clip actually of him talking to a Black woman, and she made a fantastic point. She said, we've made Black culture super popular that even our struggle seems like fun, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But some of the positions that he takes on, what's permissible as Black or female representation, and the celebration, the kind of, just in my opinion, just heavy-handed celebration of Black femininity, I think it's ultimately harmful. I think it leads to things like the statue in New York. I think it leads to I don't know if you guys have seen the movie on Amazon Prime, G20. I think it leads to nonsense like that, because it's counterintuitive, but like, once you begin to deify a group of women, it's very hard to simultaneously advocate for their protection. Right? Like, once we continue to push out media that shows what's funny about it is, like, every movie that we've seen of a Black man being president, he's had to be saved by some white dude. When Jamie Foxx was president, the dude from 300, I think, had to save him. When Danny Glover was president, some other white dude had to save him. But the first movie that there's a Black female president, she's got to save everybody. Right? So I would rather a situation where our women get the privilege of being the damsel, and our men get the privilege of living and dying for something noble, like protecting and providing for our women. But what's ironic, or what's paradoxical, is if we continue to deify our women as these gods, as these deities beyond reproach, and overly capable, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we're doing them a disservice. And I think that's a nuance that's missed during some of these monologues. Because, I mean, the reality is, if you do get a good Black woman, there is very few things in the world better than that. However, to base that in the assumption that it's easier to assume that a Black woman is good than it is to assume that a Black man is good, I think that's where you start to lose me. Right? Matter of fact, let me play this clip, because I think it kind of helps illustrate my point a bit. Make sure it's the right clip. Okay, it's not the right clip. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna play this clip, and like I said, I think it really helps illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. Okay, boom. All right.
Sorry, I heard some of y'all didn't get the memo, so I'm here to just, reiterate it. These niggas are narcissists! Run! Run for your life! They're trying to take your light! It's fuel! They're vampires! They're fucking vampires! Run! Oh my god, the devil's in your house! Run!
I'm gonna play it again because it was short.
Sorry, I heard some of y'all didn't get the memo, so I'm here to just, reiterate it. These niggas are narcissists! Run! Run for your life! They're trying to take your light! It's fuel! They're vampires! They're fucking vampires! Run! Oh my god, the devil's in your house! Run!
So, kind of like I said earlier, the issue I think men are having with this Deante Kyle clip and clips similar to it is that, like I said before, it lacks nuance. But more than anything, I think it perpetuates a very self-destructive narrative, particularly in our community, right? Like I playfully commented on that clip and said that she sounds like a white woman in 1915 after Birth of a Nation dropped in theaters, right? Because if you know about Birth of a Nation, it established a black male super predator narrative in the American imagination. And unfortunately, along the way, these white feminists and these white racists have recruited our women to champion that rhetoric, unknowingly champion that rhetoric, but champion it nonetheless. And I don't know if that young lady is being serious. I don't know whatever she's been through, but unfortunately, this is the established paradigm, the established cliche in our community amongst our women. And not only is it harmful for our men and our boys in a white supremacist context, more than anything, I think it's demoralizing, right? Like a couple years ago, feminists were talking about aborting male babies, black male babies more specifically. We've heard clips from divester channels who are a group of black women talking about how they are sexually aroused by black men being beaten by the police. Now, on a, I guess, softer level, we see this rhetoric about decentering men. And I don't think we really consider how demoralizing that is to not just the male ego, but the black boy purpose and disposition. Because the reality that kind of, permeates every single culture is men and boys are defined by their ability and their capacity to provide and protect for their women. Right? Even the Honorable Minister Farrakhan talks about how you can kind of gauge the quality of a man by the woman next to him. So when you zoom out and you consider how our women publicly represent us, not just in their presentation, but also in their disposition and in their representation of us, what do you think that tells young black boys? And I think this is a crucial part of what Deante Kyle missed. And in his articulation of women being validated in their concern for their safety when they are amongst men, he could have also taken the opportunity to acknowledge that some men, based on their experiences with their mothers, with their grandmothers, with their aunties, with the lady who violated them when he was 5, are also justified in their mistrust, in their disdain, or even their anger towards women. And how our dysfunction and our symbiotic relationship is like it's intrinsically tied. The intergender dynamic means that if our men are doing bad, our women are doing bad. If our women are doing bad, our men are doing bad. And unfortunately, we fail to acknowledge that we both participate and we both incentivize each other's dysfunction. Right? It's just now that it's coming out where men and women are admitting that, listen, the reason I ended up in jail is because there was some girl in high school I was trying to impress. Not because she told me to be a gangster, but I observed with my 2 eyes the types of men that she responded to. So when we talk about men becoming degenerate without talking about part of the motivating force that perpetuates that degeneracy, we're not having a full conversation. I did a podcast a while back covering what's the kid's name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but this kid on Instagram who went to a YouTube event because he's an influencer, and his mom was twerking on one of the other influencers, and he got upset and he started crying. And I talked about how the mother who was laughing at her crying son doesn't realize that she just mentally castrated him in that moment. Now, let's zoom out and just imagine how many men grew up watching different men come in and out of their mom's bedroom. Lil James, thank you very much. How many men whose first experience with abuse was from their mom? It's only now that we're talking about men whose first experience with colorism, a thing that men are kind of exclusively blamed for, was with a woman. It was their auntie who kept calling them black as hell, or their mom who kept calling them black as hell. So I say all that to say that we can't keep irresponsibly perpetuating these anti-black male sentiments in an attempt to support women or protect black women, or all these ideals that we are superficially approaching. And secondarily, you can coddle somebody into self-destruction, and I think that's what we're doing. I think that's what we're doing. If I believe that black women are goddesses, and I believe that black women are the mother earth, and they are divine, and they are the best thing since sliced bread, I cannot simultaneously believe that any negative thing that they do is simply a reflection of the negative thing that men do. I can't hold those two beliefs. They're conflicting beliefs. If something is powerful and influential, it has a role in things going good, and it has responsibility in things going bad. So here's another clip that illustrates my other issue with this Deante Kyle situation.
Some of y'all didn't get the memo.
Let me pull this one up. This one should be already up. But yeah, in the meantime, you guys put your comments in the chat. I'm curious, how you guys are thinking about this. And like I said, if we keep the stream going, I would love for you guys to come up and let's talk about it. All right, y'all can tell I'm out of practice, man. I'm usually faster with pulling stuff up, but I'm dragging. There we go. All right, so in my research process, I tried to pull up other people reacting to it. Ironically, the majority of the reactions that I saw were actually people like supporting Deante Kyle, um, which was interesting. And I think this particular example is interesting. So I'm gonna shut up and let y'all listen.
And I don't give a damn. Deante Kyle said what the fuck he said. And I'm going to stand behind him and everybody else too. You black niggas look to your left and look to your right, and you tell your black nigga ass friend, daddy, cousin, uncle, son to be a motherfucking man. Y'all ain't even man enough to hold each other motherfucking accountable. And y'all want to talk about a motherfucker pandering? If a motherfucker pandering to a fucking woman, about damn time. About damn time. Y'all pander to y'all homeboys all motherfucking day, but you can't pander to the motherfucker that you want to stick your pee-pee up in and out. These women are fucking scared. They scared for their life. These women are scared to fucking say no. And y'all bitches want us to think that y'all are the motherfucking victim? Fuck you. And fuck the rest of them. At this point, ladies, close your motherfucking legs. Make the requirements higher than fucking ever, because these niggas ain't even meeting the requirements that y'all giving them, and y'all giving them bare minimum ass requirements, which y'all even giving them exceptions for. Fuck these niggas. Y'all having problems with them? Fuck them. If they don't meet the requirements, oh well, bye. You bringing problems in my life any motherfucking way. Not a black man, a black nigga is the biggest problem in a black woman life. And y'all want to get on this motherfucking app and say somebody pandering to a woman because he's a black man and sticking up for them. About damn time a black man do.
All right, so while I was watching that, I was seeing some of you guys' comments, and yeah, I chose that clip in particular because I think there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for the homosexual community as an example, their relationship with black women and their deification of black women, and in my opinion, how that's harmful. To the point I made earlier, part of the demoralization and part of, I think, the missed nuance is part of women's divinity. And this isn't just true for the black community, but I think more so for the black community. Women are the portal through which life emerges. And women dictate who gets to live forever. That's a hyperbolic way to put it, but women dictate who gets to live forever. Women dictate what the next 50 years of people is going to look like, what the next century of people is going to look like. Primarily through mate selection, like every other species, but then secondarily through rearing, because, I mean, if throughout history men's primary responsibility has been to provide and protect, the majority of time is going to be spent with the mother. And her priorities are going to be prioritized by the offspring. Her values, her intelligence. I believe I read something that said, a woman's intelligence is more predictive of her future offspring than the male's. And even to a lesser extent, like I've seen couples where the dad is tall and the mom is short, and the son is short like the mom. He's still taller than the mom, but he's shorter than the dad. I have never, in my years, seen a son who is shorter than his mom. I've never seen it not one time. And that's just a superficial height thing, but like part of women's divinity is the fact that they dictate so much. Like we found out recently, for instance, that men actually dictate the development of the placenta, for instance, right? That's important when, it comes to us getting our minds and our bodies together in preparation for the process of inseminating a woman, getting her pregnant, starting a family. But after that, the majority of what matters in the rearing of the child has a lot to do with the mother's disposition, the mother's education level, the mother's mental. And I think a lot of times we take those things for granted. And I say that to say, like, in this example that this guy is giving, these niggas deserve trash or whatever. You have to also acknowledge who is producing these quote unquote niggas, who is incentivizing these niggas' behavior, who is making sure that this version of black men is what continues to survive. It's not black men, it's women. And we often gloss over that, right? And we end up in this like chicken or the egg thing. It's not that simple. A lot of like we talk so much about women who end up in terrible situations and have terrible life outcomes, and we always go back to the father because her father wasn't in her life. What we don't talk about is some men's outcomes being directly linked to their mother or a woman. There's a lot of rumors that part of Diddy, for instance, his sexual deviancy was taught by his mother and her friends. We found out not too long ago that R. Kelly's sexual deviancy was a result of his cousin, his female cousin, who molested him, or sister or cousin who molested him when he was young. And the ironic, or I think the unfortunate part is, I think mentally, even those two examples I just gave, we can mentally say something happened to her. And we'll keep going back until it lands at a man. But when it comes to men, who we forget were once boys, who we forget were once babies, oh, I don't care what his backstory is, he's just a shitty individual. And black men are shitty individuals. And then you squint hard enough and you sound just like white women in the 1950s or even 1915. And that's the issue. So like this grace and this deification that we are giving black women, the only way it's going to be productive is if black men are given the same grace and deification and consideration. When we're having conversations about why is it that, when we see these brothers getting drafted to the NFL or the NBA, we see a white woman on his arm? Why is it that Neil deGrasse Tyson and the black men that history is going to remember are picking white women more often? Like it's starting to trend in that direction. Why is that? With those questions, we trivialize it and simplify it. Oh, it's self-hate. Full stop. You flip it. Why did Serena Williams end up with a white woman? Oh, a white man. Why is Michelle Obama flirting with a white man on her podcast? Oh, well, black men probably didn't find her attractive in her youth, and she probably had bad experiences. And we give them the human benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to black men, that is simply not the case. So when I talk about this approach, this heavy-handed approach being demoralizing, I'm talking about the fact that these brothers are observing what's actually happening. These brothers are observing the men that women are choosing to replicate. These brothers are observing the fact that nobody even gives a damn about men's stories, men's motivations, men's sadness, men's struggles, whatever the case, particularly black men. You exist to serve. You exist to the extent, and you're celebrated to the extent that you can make a woman happy in the short term. And what's the most fucked up part about it? It's a "what have you done for me lately" transaction. Like, we have to tell the truth. You could buy a woman a car and she'll fall in love with the nigga who helps her change the tire. Like that's the reality. That's always been the reality of masculinity. So when you consider like some of these, like I say, heavy-handed critiques of men, women are valid for feeling unsafe around men. It's like, yes, as a man, you should empathize with women. You should empathize with the fragility that they feel and the internal understanding that they know that G20 shit is bullshit. The woman king is bullshit. Every video or movie you've seen of a woman beating up a 6'3" guy is bullshit. We should empathize with them. However, I'm going to explain to my daughter that the extent of your power is where you choose to go and who you choose to be around. Other than that, you can do very little to affect the situation. I'm not going to fill her head up with this nonsense that, men should just not want to do stuff and men should just be better and we should teach our boys to be better. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So to conflate both those conversations and say, because some men are unsafe, it is valid for the narrative to be that men are unsafe. I think that's incorrect. I'm gonna give my daughter the understanding to assume. Let's take it out of men and women, for instance. When you're driving on the street, and some of y'all's parents probably gave y'all the same advice. When you're driving on the street, you should assume nobody else knows how to drive. Is that the reality? No. But that should be your working assumption. Should it mean that you should have road rage and think everybody's a piece of shit? No. Should it mean that you should believe the hype that Asian people can't drive, whatever this case may be? No. But it should be that you should be cautious and you should exercise the agency that you have. But the nonsense of men should be accountable for other men's degeneracy, despite the fact that other men's degeneracy is simultaneously being rewarded by women, it's nonsense. And I've seen, because of the work that I do, I've seen the cognitive dissonance play out in real time. And he actually touched on it in one of his podcasts. One of the women that I interviewed was talking the regular stuff about, men should stand up to other men and blah, 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 blah. And then I asked her, would you want your son playing Superman out in the street and jumping into fights to defend a woman he doesn't know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? At that point, that's when she remembered, actually, some women trifling. And I've seen situations where like they both ganged up on the dude who was trying to protect her. Or I've seen situations where, homie jumped in or defended his sister. He ends up in prison. The girl ends up back with the dude. But when you're giving monologues, it sounds good to protect Black women, full stop, or believe Black women, full stop. And all this hyperbolic stuff that we say because it sounds good. And to my point earlier about like his version of pro-Blackness, it's romantic. I've been really, I don't know if it's because of the show Shogun, because I really like that show when I was watching it, or Ghost of Tsushima. It's now my favorite video game of all time. But I've really been nerding out about Japanese culture, and because in order for us to really be able to look at things objectively, we have to be able to zoom out and unblack and white things for a minute. And one of the things that came up in the show is this idea that you should have three hearts, right? Your public heart, your that's seen to everybody, your private heart that's only seen to your family, and then like your deepest heart that's only seen to you. And the reality of navigating the bureaucracy of society, particularly in a nation that you do not have any real control over, is being covert. And I think sometimes we talk about pro-blackness with a bombastic arrogance, as if we do not know about COINTELPRO, or we do not know about the Black Wall Streets, or we cannot rationalize a white vested interest in keeping us in line. Like it's in their best interest that we are not talking this shit. So when I see people who are like militant overtly in their approach to blackness, it concerns me. It concerns me, number one, because that version is always going to be ineffective unless you have sovereignty or control. That's just the reality. That version is romantic because what actually gains power or what actually retains power is being covert, being cunning. And that also goes along the lines with women's power, right? I fear women far more than I fear men, particularly because they're not to be feared. As an example, like, people were talking about a couple years ago about Idris Elba being the new 007. And some white lady was like, we don't want the 007. 007 is white. And people were outraged, obviously, because that's on its face seems like a ridiculous statement. But when you really think about it, 007's character is based on a spy who infiltrates high white society in Europe. In what ballroom is a 6'3" black man going to walk into and have the flexibility and have the elusiveness to be a spy about shit? In what world does that work? All eyes are on him because of, again, a lot of these assumptions that we have about black men. So we can't, be cunning. In that same environment, who could do a better job? A black woman. She's just a woman. Women are dangerous. So when we're having these conversations about, men are dangerous and blah, 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 like, sure, but let's tell the full story and let's be more nuanced and let's be a bit more, comprehensive in our approach. I think I have one more clip. Appreciate y'all supporting. But yeah, I think this conversation is important because I think the more we overly simplify this stuff, whether as a community specifically or whether as men and women generally, I think we do the conversation and each other a disservice. All right, so let me, boom. All right, so this clip, a friend of mine actually sent it to me today. And I think it kind of, in a comedic way, kind of alludes to part of people's issue with this Deante Kyle situation.
They are scared women. Don't worry, ma'ams. I am a harmless male. I will take perfect care of you from this corner. I will not look at you. I will just simply protect you at all costs. Do not touch them. You are a male figure, and you will not touch them. They are scared women. Don't worry, ma'ams. I am a harmless male. I will take perfect care of you from this corner. I will not look at you. I will just simply protect you at all costs. Do not touch them. You are a male figure, and you will not touch them. They are scared women. Don't worry, man.
So, I mean, obviously, that's supposed to be funny. I find two issues with it. Number one, I think the idea of the video for the women who are critical thinkers should be insulting, right? Because he's basically alluding to the fact that a lot of what is being asked for is a performance of protection. It's the pageantry of protecting or listening to or supporting or accountability or whatever. It's the pageantry. It's the performance of it. It's not the reality. And the other thing is that in the comment section, a lot of the women who commented were saying, you know, this is better than ... or I'll take this over, or this is what a green flag looks like. And it's like, man, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, this is ridiculous. But again, when these conversations have regressed to simply just what sounds good and what makes me feel good, like TikTok monologues are pretty much like football game day speeches at this point. It's just a monologue saying things that a certain group wants to hear, and then, you know, either choosing to argue in the comments, or nowadays people don't even like have conversations and they'll just block you, or they'll just like cater to their niche group. And the thing is, like, there's a concept when we're talking about race relationship. It's called the soft bigotry of low expectations. Another way to put it in this conversation in particular is we've been socialized to infantilize women. We've been socialized to a degree to see women as these helpless, immature, but in a divine way, people, right? Like immature, powerful. Like the best analogy I could think of is like Zeno from Dragon Ball Z. Like that's the working understanding men have been given of women. You know, whether it's happy wife, happy life, or maintaining your marriage is learning how to tell her yes, or learning how to say I'm sorry even when you're not, and all kinds of unsustainable nonsense that I think a lot of boys are coming to terms with in the modern day and saying, I don't want no parts of it. Like it's this immature thing that I'm simultaneously supposed to respect. It's never their fault because there is a greater thing that their intuition is fixated on, and I'm just not seeing it yet. So even if she's wrong, she's right. Like even in a situation where like you're objectively wrong, I'm supposed to assume that, you know, there's more to it. Now, in the white context, in the white and black context, I saw a video the other day, the street interviews. They interviewed a bunch of white people and was like, you know, is ID or requiring ID to vote, is that voter suppression? Is that racist or whatever? And they were like, yeah. And a lot of their rationale was, you know, a lot of black folks don't have IDs. A lot of black folks don't even know how to go get IDs. And then they interviewed black folks and were like, we got IDs, right? So there is a part of the complexity of this conversation is like there is a point in, you know, white allyhood or allyship where you toe the line of racist, because all those deeply held eugenicist ideals that you had, that you're superior, are still there, but they're being expressed differently. Just like all these deeply held ideals that some men have, that they're superior and they should be superior to the degree that they can navigate women's abject immaturity, it borders the patriarchy that those men simultaneously claim to be fighting. And, you know, at one point I was actually, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine. I was actually becoming kind of critical of Mr. Jason Wilson, and I have a great deal of respect for him. But I still don't know necessarily if it's his fault or his responsibility, but it's gotten to the point where like the core of his fan base now is women. And I find that problematic. I think particularly with his last book, the title is "The Man the Moment Demands," which for me is such a fantastic title. The Man the Moment Demands. Now, the issue is he is a very, and I say this with all due respect, he's a very peculiar brother. He does exceptional work with boys. Should your girlfriend expect you to be Jason Wilson? I think that's ridiculous. That man's beard is white. And that's why, like, you hear some of these women sometimes they say, you know, I'm waiting until I find somebody like my dad, without admitting that your dad is not 6 foot. When your mom met your dad, she didn't require him to take her to Ruth Chris or buy her Birkin bags or take her on trips or take cute pictures with her. None of the nonsense that's required these days. So you're comparing 25-year-olds to an already established, married, seasoned 60-year-old man. It's irrational. It doesn't make any sense. So because we keep creating these, and I think men are guilty of this too. Like we create some like unattainable, unrealistic ideals for each other in an attempt to kind of like procrastinate on dealing with the reality of men or dealing with the reality of women or actually having to learn who men are, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their anxieties, their experiences. And men are guilty of that too. So again, before we continue to heavy-handedly say, you know, women are valid in being afraid of every man, especially black men, and starting to sound like Hillary Clinton, we got to take that step back. Now, I want to talk about some of the things I actually agree with Deante Kyle on. I love the fact, because he alluded to during his podcast that he does some community work. I think that's fantastic. I think he's in Atlanta. He talked about, you know, doing some work with the kids, working with the boys more specifically, especially people in the hood who come from environments like he comes from. I think that's beautiful. I think, you know, he went on a monologue about how street rules are stupid, like the no snitching policy being enforced on people who are not in that life, not in prison. That's fantastic. I'll ride for that every day of the week. Our culture's glorification of black degenerate criminal culture, and not just glorification, but like it's like we are protecting that part of our brand as if like that should be the face of blackness. And then we have the conversation about, you know, respectability politics and you know, black exceptionalism. And I think those are conversations worth having. However, we have to also talk about black sustainability and what we celebrate as black culture or as the primary expression of black culture is counterproductive to the sustainability of black culture. And whatever community that you're looking at, the Jewish community, the Japanese community, the Mongolian community, whatever community you're looking at, its number one priority is not self-expression like ours. It is sustainability. Another idea he had that I loved, he said there should be a 1-800 Hebrew. So it's like a 911, but for the community where, you know, you dial that number and a bunch of Hebrew Israelites pull up. That's I'm with that. If you run a campaign based on that, I'm with that. You know, we can go back to the Black Panther Party. Even the Hebrew Israelites, they've done things similar to that. So I'm all for that. Some places where he lost me. And I think there's still some examples of places where, we agree. He alluded to at one point, I think one of his callers said that men don't want to marry her because she's a single mother. And I think he said it was, what's wrong with these dudes or whatever the case may be. He made a good point where he said, don't lead a woman on if this is already a deal breaker for you, and then later on, like, drop it on her because you wanted some butt. 1000%. However, if you are a man without kids, and if you're a woman with kids, I think it's a healthy assumption to assume that a man without kids would not idealize a situation where he's coming into a situation where a woman with a kid, because you wouldn't want that for your son. If you had your way, you wouldn't want that for your son. So there should be some foresight on your part as a woman. And as a man, also, it should be assumed that you would want to start and establish your own empire as opposed to supplementing another man's. Right? So to call men who don't date women with kids weird, I wouldn't say weird. It's weird if he leads her on to think that it could be a thing that it's not. I agree with you there. But for our culture, who is unwilling to even consider polygamy, for instance, to normalize step parenthood, I think that's a mistake. Let's see. He said that men are afraid of accountability because of childhood. I think, that's another example of the way that he casually trivialized something that was complex. Because the reason Black men are afraid, as we're putting it that way, of this type of accountability is not as trivial or micro as their childhoods. It's about history. It's about a history of being blamed for things we didn't do. Right. So let's talk about Emmett Till. Let's not talk about your homeboy Sean, whose mom let him get away with everything because she was dressing him up like the nigga who broke her heart. Let's talk about Emmett Till. Let's talk about I can't remember the brother's name who just got out of prison for doing 40 years for a crime he didn't commit. Let's talk about that. So again, if we're going to be sensitive of, and rightfully so, and be delicate with the history that informs our women's disposition, while simultaneously ignoring or trivializing the history that informs men's disposition, particularly when being bombarded with this one-sided narrative of you being a bad person because you were born with XY chromosomes. Like we gotta tell a full story. Another thing that I thought was interesting, and I think this is more so a remnant of like this Tupac archetype that I think he kind of tiptoes into, because in one breath he said violence is not masculine, and then like 2 sentences later he was like, when I see some streamer, it's up. Right? Like we and people like Terry Crews, even Terry Crews was guilty of that. He talked about how he was molested by a Hollywood executive with, compassion, or with, kind of like, this is the story, this is what happens. And then when he was critiqued about it by a Black man, now he wants to be violent. Pick a side. Pick a side. Another thing I agreed with, his analysis of Fresh and Fit, spot on. I don't even have to elaborate on that. I've done enough coverage of. I've even tried to like give them the benefit of the doubt, but they are a net negative in my opinion. So we're aligned there. One of my notes I wrote down hyperbolic intellectual. I think I've kind of touched on that. Some people have said pseudo intellectual. I think the brother's smart. I think the brother's really, really intelligent. I think that his intelligence is in conflict with his background as well, because there's like a Tupacness about him, and I think unfortunately that's what's resonating with women, not what he's saying, but it's that, you know, and I'm gonna check any nigga who has something. It's that type of ether energy, which again, to my earlier point, is the most counterproductive part of Black sustainability. He's right about Diddy. I agree with that. I think, you know, my brief thoughts on the Diddy situation. I think Diddy did that shit. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any evidence. I think Cassie participated in that shit. I think that the messiness of reality is that the line between victim and perpetrator is very, very blurry, right? Because there's some stories where like she participated eagerly. She even facilitated some things. There's some stories where, you know, she was basically sex trafficked. There are some stories where, you know, she's suffering from Stockholm syndrome. I think all those things are worth some empathy. I think especially as Black folks who have internalized Stockholm syndrome with white people. So it's complex. It's complex. I feel the same about the Tory and Megan situation. If he did go to jail because of a woman, I think he's an idiot. But I think there are a lot of Black men who have done jail time, ended up in the dirt, ended up, you know, ruining their lives behind Black women or behind being the version of women that our community celebrates, with things like no snitching, with the fact that when you come back from prison, you're better received than when you come back from college, right? So we can't just demonize these men wholesale without also talking about the complexities underneath it. One of the points he made, he said, Black men are jealous of Black women's earned success in education. In my notes, I put logical fallacy. Black men are not jealous of Black women. I think that is another hyperbolic intellectual statement. Black men are, I think it's a combination of concerned. And again, I'm speaking for the Black men who actually are the more representative part of our community. They're concerned and they're confused. Right? There's also, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention, there is also a resentment for sure. And I think it's on both sides. I don't think it's unique to us, right? I just think the difference is when people talk about how their dad ain't shit, they can build community around that. When people mention that their mom missed their birthday, nobody gives a shit. It's about every other birthday that she was there and she did this, and we deify women. We deify mothers. Father's Day is coming up. I have no idea what day it is. I know what Mother's Day is. Right? So when we talk about Black men being jealous of Black women, number one, a lot of these statistics, and I've also been like misquoted. A lot of these statistics are misleading, right? So when we see Black women are outpacing Black men, what a lot of those statistics are referring to is growth rate. So Black women are not the most educated, but they're fastly becoming educated more or faster at an increasing rate, at a faster increasing rate than any other demographic. That's not the same as being more already. It's that you're rising faster. At that rate, you will be more eventually, but it's a Faustian bargain, right? So if we're going to talk about Black women being the most educated, we also have to talk about Black women being the most in debt. We also have to talk about Black women being the most evicted. We also have to talk about Black women's deteriorating mental health across the country. We have to talk about the whole thing. We have to talk about fibroids. We have to talk about all the negative aspects of having to do your best man impression for the past several centuries. We have to talk about that too. So when you say Black men are jealous, it's not a jealousy, just like it was never a intimidated, I think is what a lot of people say. No, he's not intimidated by you. You're just insufferable. You've adopted and adapted the worst parts of masculinity and now want to be celebrated for it. I saw a clip the other day of a woman saying, I've created 15 apps and I bench 135 and all kinds of like masculine shit. And like, you think I'm gonna settle for you? And I'm like, lady, you don't even care what your customer base thinks. And the funny thing is, so like my professional job is UX design. And the entire job is getting as close as possible to the psychology of the consumer. This application that I'm making, this website that I'm making, fuck how I feel about it. Is the demographic that I've identified as my customer base, is this optimized for them to navigate? So I have to care about what they think. I have to care about their idea of cool. I have to care about their idea of priorities. And our women are masters of doing this in a corporate setting. But for whatever reason, it's impossible to value male involvement enough to step outside of yourself and consider yourself from the male perspective. And like I've said before, you hear a lot of women who incorrectly say, my girlfriends are great catches, but they're all single. There would be great catches if they were men because you're evaluating them like you would a man. But from the perspective of men, they're not a great catch. What the resume that's going to get you a job at McDonald's and the resume that's going to get you a job at Google are two different resumes. Shit, the resume that's going to get you a job at Facebook and Google are two different resumes. And you need to do your due diligence to figure out what Google is looking for. Not just expect Google to accept you because you think you're a great candidate. No, you have to convince us because there are a lot of great candidates. And I've been talking, I've been ruminating about, this whole AI thing. And I watched Her for the first time. I don't know if you guys have seen it with the dude who was on Joaquin Phoenix. There we go. And I told a friend of mine, I was like, this is going to be next year. This if it's not already now, it's going to be next year. Turns out it's already now. There's a documentary I found on YouTube about it was following 3 Chinese or Korean women who had AI boyfriends. And this is before VO3, the latest Chat GPT update. Like, this is, so as this thing refines and it becomes more human-like, and now it goes from software to hardware because OpenAI just acquired Johnny Ive's company, and they're focused on AI hardware. What's that going to mean? Because we talking about jobs being taken away, but like, unfortunately, men are going to be taken away too, because I think the degradation of this male-female discourse, it's forcing us to compartmentalize the different parts of the male-female relationship. And instead of having to, like I think our parents did, having to find it in one person, now you can compartmentalize it and be like, the emotional fulfillment, I'll find it from this AI chatbot because she cares and she listens and she knows me very well, blah, blah, blah. I can pay for sex at this cuddle cafe that's going to be legalized, and I could do this here and I could do this here. And eventually, when the technology gets good enough, I don't have to deal with all this organic nonsense at all. Because the part of the consequence of AI, part of the consequence of social media, part of the consequence of some of these narratives of you are God and you are perfect, and it's not that you're too much, it's that they're too little, is because we've created an environment where we do not feel or we do not think that we have to compromise ourselves for anybody, even though that's literally the context of any relationship. The idea of showing up as your authentic self is a logical fallacy. We adjust ourselves as we should based on the environment. That's how every other species operates. And that's how you maintain, you sustain, and you establish relationships. That's not a bad thing. But we've made it a bad thing. So the only alternative is a programmable agent that is in love with whatever version of ourselves we give to it. All right. So another note, I said I'm almost to the end. Hopefully, I'm saying something reasonable. Like I said in the beginning, if any part of what I've said or what we've touched on has stood out to you, please clip this up. Send me some of these clips so we can kind of streamline this content creation process, because this one man thing is a lot. Let's see. I had one last clip actually, and this is actually in reference to the Deante Kyle situation as well. And this is another guy reacting to men's reaction to the Deante Kyle situation. And I have less of an issue with this brother, even though I still have an issue with his approach, but I also have a story. So let me play this first.
Mothers, the word of the day is accountability. If you do better and choose better, you wouldn't have these problems. But whenever we talk about deadbeat and abusive fathers, now it's the word of the day is empathy. It's the CIA, Ronald Reagan, the Anunnaki, right? Empathy without accountability is encouragement. And we've been encouraging psychopaths for too long. And a big part of it is a lot of us as men, including myself, are not raised to be good people. We're raised to be good tools, right? What are the traits of a good man? Strong, dependable, fearless, reliable, right? A provider. None of these are uniquely human traits. We could be talking about a brick wall or a cash register. Right? What about what are the traits of a good woman, right? Kind, gentle, sweet, affectionate, mothering, nurturing, right? Empathetic, having sensitive, right? These are all uniquely human traits, right? And it's created this like split in society, right? Where in order to be a good woman, you have to be a good person. But you do not have to be a good person to be a good man. A woman that's a deadbeat with years of abuse allegations would find herself just about unhireable under the public eye. For men in the entertainment industry, that's a prerequisite. Some would say like a starter pack, right? Like that's how you end up in situations where like Dr. Dre's dancing on stage to Not Like Us, despite the fact that he has like a 20+ year history of abusing women. We kind of create a system where like income overrides accountability for a lot of us as men, bro. Like where we all know that like, bro, there's a lot of grown men out here that would call a toddler big bro if he was making enough money, right? And it's always become like a race to the bottom where it's like, bro, the goal isn't to like become the best person you can be. The goal is to become so successful that you don't have to worry about being a good person. That's exactly why we have a male loneliness epidemic. We've gotten so used to like building bonds and relationships off of what we can do for other people instead of who we actually are inside, that like you don't have friends, bro. Like you're just useful for hooping with, right? You don't have friends. You're just useful for getting on the game, right? Like if you were to stop getting on the game and stop going to the gym, watch how quiet your life gets. Yes, you might have a wide range of friends, but how deep are they, right? And the problem is that the only way to build deeper, long-lasting relationships with other people is to practice vulnerability. But a lot of the forms and ways we can practice vulnerability are associated with femininity. Like, bro, it's not gay to call homies up and say I miss you. It's not gay to go on birthday brunches or memorize people's birthdays or to be sensitive, right? Like being sensitive sensitive is how you build relationships. You tell people, hey, I didn't like that you did that. That hurt my feelings. Then they can avoid doing it in the future. One of the most jarring aspects of getting older was realizing that most people are just role-playing manliness. Like, most men don't like sports. They're just pretending. Like, I'm a Trailblazers fan. I really love hoops. You got to be a Blazers fan, right? And I'm in Los Angeles, so when the Lakers got beat by the Wolves in 5, right after game 5, the whole week is just Anthony Edwards, man, he cooked this, man, he cooked this, yeah, he kicked it. No, he didn't. Oh my God, he went like 5 of 19. Like, that was the Rudy Gobert series, but you don't know that because you don't actually watch the games. You're just like making up narratives. So like, because you think that's what we're supposed to be talking about. Like, accountability doesn't only apply to how we treat abusers, even though like that is an important part that needs to be done better. It also applies to how we treat ourselves, bro. We have to be accountable to being vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Our truest self, and also holding spaces so other people around us can also be vulnerable. You know, saying this from a place of love and care, man. It's the reason I invest so much of my time into after school programs, and why I'm even now in Los Angeles. I'm trying to start like third space. I'm trying to start throwing events and stuff like that because it really is important to. And I just think there's a lot of people stuck in a cage with no locks. You can walk out any day. You know what I'm saying? But pretty good, man.
All right, so I don't know if I should. Okay, so basically, I saw that clip on a young lady's Instagram profile. I was just scrolling. I don't follow anybody, so I was just scrolling, and I commented, and my comment was something along the lines of basically what I've said today, that women participate in maintaining this patriarchal system that they love complaining about, and also this form of masculinity that they complain about. I was more eloquent in my comment, and she responded and was like, boo-hoo, who cares? Something very like immature. And then I responded and said, if we're going to think women are gods and women are powerful, we also have to acknowledge their participation and their power as it manifests when problems happen. And she blocked me. So, but before I elaborate on what I think about brothers like him and his position, I think that's where we are in the discourse now. I don't have to hear things that I disagree with or things that don't make me feel good. That's what's dangerous. Because we're not even considering things based on their merit. Like, I've gone through and like, he said this, I liked it. He said this, I kind of disagree with it. This could have been phrased better. We're not even doing that anymore. It's, does this make me feel good, or is this in line with the echo chamber that I'm subscribed to? Whether it's the feminist echo chamber, whether it's the manispherian echo chamber, whatever echo chamber I'm subscribed to, is this in line with it? If it's not in line with it, I have the ability or the power to unsubscribe to anything that no longer serves me, or maintaining my peace, or whatever the case may be. Like, people aren't even willing to engage, and that's what I think is dangerous. To what he's saying, I think it's a beautiful ideal. I think that hopefully our version of maleness that we co-create in the future isn't reliant on male expendability. I don't think people will subscribe to that. And what I mean about that specifically is manhood has been defined since time immemorial by your willingness and your ability or perceived ability to protect and to provide. Along the way, incentives were then put in place to bolster those two mandates. So, as an example, like, I was watching a Psychax video, and he made a great video called "The Disposable Man," but he gave the example of how Japanese kamikaze pilots were basically the Lakers in the 90s before their suicide missions. They were celebrated. They were treated like kings. Their families were put up, whatever the case may be, to incentivize this sacrifice that was necessary for them to make for the country. Same if you look at like Boko Haram or any terrorist organization, there are incentives put in place for men to make the ultimate sacrifice. That's always been the case. And part of what maintains that is the subtle, overt, or covert narrative that as a man, you are as good as what you are willing to die for, not what you're willing to live for. That's a new narrative. As a man, you are as good as what you're willing to die for. So when we fast forward now, and we think about the male loneliness epidemic, or we think about things like men aren't sensitive or don't connect to other men emotionally, but rather in a transactional way. Even I think some research came out, and like we have to have a reason to get together, whether it's like a basketball game or an event or whatever the case may be, whereas women don't need a reason. They just get together because of the sake of getting together. We very seldom ask why. And we very seldom actually like investigate the nuts and bolts of it. One of my favorite quotes, it was actually from The Dark Knight, but Harvey Dent said, "Either you die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And what that quote means to me is that like these clean, moralistic, idealistic lines we try to draw between good man and bad man, or good person and bad person, the realities are never that clean. Some of the greatest leaders we've ever had in the history of the world, the Napoleons and the Shaka Zulus and this and that, if you were to test them, they're probably clinically diagnosable narcissists. But that narcissistic personality was necessary to do what they did. Just like men's calloused emotionalness is necessary to maintain the facade that keeps women and children safe. And the reality is, when you then investigate that and say, oh, I want men to care about themselves and to, prioritize their well-being, fast forward 50 years. That man who cares about himself and prioritizes his well-being is not going to protect you, man. Because you're just another person who's prioritizing themselves and protecting their well-being. Because altruism is bullshit. People never do good for goodness sake. That is antithetical to human nature. So what happens through culture is you create incentives for people to do or be the things you want them to do or be. And since time immemorial, we've created incentives for men to do and be the things that were necessary. We created incentives for them to run full speed into battle. We created incentives for them to go into a coal mine knowing that the shit might collapse underneath them or above them. So all I'm saying is, when we're talking about this stuff and heavy-handedly say men need to just blah, 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 and just overlook and gloss over all the reasons why men have to be these things, and how what we're asking them to be is going in the opposite direction, and we actually don't want them to be these things, we have to be responsible. Because, again, part of men's resentment that is also very seldomly talked about is this doublespeak. Women wanting and requiring us at some level to be contradictory and conflicting things simultaneously, and grading us on our ability to execute and maintain our sanity. So let's have a full, nuanced conversation. The men that you're idealizing and talking about we need to become, those aren't the men you want. Those aren't the men you want in the short term, really, because you're going to friend zone them. And those aren't the men that you're going to want in the long term, really, because women have always responded to violent, capable men. Guess what? Violent, capable men also have some shortcomings. So either you have to say, okay, what is the most valuable thing? And what can I work with, create space for, accommodate? Because that's the reality of, to my AI point, that's the reality of interpersonal relationships. Men are not AI that's going to conform to you and, just regurgitate whatever you want to hear. And the ones that do, you should be wary of, because they don't even believe it fully. They can't. Because in 2 sentences, they'll probably say some other shit that conflicts what they said, but it sounds good, or it's in your service, so it doesn't conflict it. Right? So, I don't know, man. This stuff is frustrating sometimes, like I said, because, and I think that's part of the reason why I've kind of like taken a back seat, because people aren't looking for depth for the most part. People are looking for game day speeches. People want to think, for example, that if there was a black versus white uprising, that black folks have a chance. That's not the case. At least in this country. Particularly if we think we're going to go in there and box with them, we're going to have to be strategic. We're going to have to utilize guerrilla warfare. We're going to have to do things that are uncommon and unpredictable. That's the reality. That was the reality for every other culture in the world. And life is not black and white. So going back to the video game I was talking about, the Ghost of Tsushima, it's about the Mongol invasion of Japan, the first attempt. And what's ironic is, so Tsushima is an island off the coast of Japan, and the Mongols invaded Tsushima on their way to invading like mainland Japan. So in the game, you play as the protagonist named Jin Sakai, who's the good guy, quote unquote. When you actually read about Japanese history, Japan has invaded Korea several times. Even within Japan, different clans invade each other, war against each other, that led to the formation of samurai and the Edo period and everything. So like that quote, until the lion becomes a historian, the hunter will always be a hero, is the reality of life. It's perspective based. It's complex. It's nuanced. Good guys and bad guys sometimes are the same guys, just a couple years or lifetimes apart. And whatever we're asking men to do or be, we have to consider why they're not. And we have to weigh the alternative, as opposed to just these should ideals of, it would be nice if men, if my boyfriend was, home more, and then he's home and you're complaining that he doesn't work enough. And then he works too much and you're complaining he doesn't give you attention. And unfortunately, we've created this perverse echo chamber in society where women are incentivized for complaining. I saw a post the other day. A woman said, some dude tricked me into leaving my husband. Some dude tricked me into leaving my great husband. So this narcissism that we've used men to mascot is more prevalent amongst our species than we realize. And what's particularly insidious, and part of the reason I said I fear women, is female narcissism is harder to identify because narcissism is considered an antisocial personality disorder. But female nature is inherently social. So female nature is inherently more equipped to mask, to integrate, despite being narcissistic, antisocial, Machiavellian, whatever the case may be, which is part of what makes them dangerous. So this overwhelming narrative that men are bad people and that it's valid for women to be concerned or to be apprehensive with men, while simultaneously saying that it's not necessarily valid for men to be concerned or apprehensive with women, is nonsense. Another thing he brought up, he said, or he alluded to, that we're losing the best of black men to the street or jail, which is another logical fallacy. And it's actually in opposition to his idealized version of masculinity that he described earlier. He said that we should celebrate the rebels as the revolutionaries, despite it being unsustainable and despite it being misandrous. When I talk about black men being demoralized, black boys being demoralized, I'm talking about the boys who decided to go to college and watch how their community embraces the nigga who decided to go to jail. I'm talking about the black boys who decided to go to med school and watch the community celebrate the dude who's selling crack to the neighborhood. That's what I'm talking about. So this framing of our black degenerates being our black revolutionaries is ridiculous, and we need to stop that shit. That was my critique of Tupac. Like this overt performative version of masculinity that is not strategic, that is loud and bombastic and belligerent, is antithetical to sustaining our community. When you study any other culture, I brought up Japan for instance. The men that they celebrate, the men that they deify, are reserved. They're not these female men that we celebrate. You're a revolutionary because you have your mom's disposition? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And the thing that's annoying, the thing that's the most annoying is like, we talk about like, all these cookout invites that we give white people with a little bit of rhythm or a little bit of athleticism. You know who gives the most cookout invites? Our women. Our women give a lot of cookout invites. And we need to address that. We need to talk about why Beyonce has a blonde wig and what that might mean for girls coming up. We need to talk about that. But again, we deify, so then we can't talk about it. We deify, so we can't talk about it. And this is from somebody who's not afraid to also call out black men. And I've talked about it in other videos. Like, people assume that some of these ratchet rappers' fan bases are women, but it's men. Sexy Red's core fan base is men. That's statistically proven. Even she said it. Now we can get more nuanced and be like, okay, maybe these are DJs who are playing the music that the women are going to shake their ass to. We can get more nuanced, but like, my point is, our dysfunction is interdependent. And we need to stop celebrating crash outs. And we need to be careful when we keep idealizing certain aspects of this fictitious version of masculinity we've never seen before, but we think would be nice. that is in opposition to other aspects that we rely on. Women are complaining that men don't want to get up on the train or they don't want to get up on the bus, while also saying, I'm equally capable and don't look at me as weak. Can't have it both ways. He said, this is another one that I circled, Deante Kyle. He said, the best men skipped school while the best women leveraged it. He didn't say it in those words, but he kind of alluded to it. The best men, it goes back to the, the street dudes or the revolutionaries who just needed education, which I'm willing to go with if we're talking about rehabilitation. But if we're talking about like that being the brand or the assumption, that's ridiculous. And then celebrating women for leveraging school while celebrating for men for skipping it. Now, if we're talking about maintaining and simultaneously celebrating the masculinity that we find problematic, that's more prevalent amongst men who read at a 5th grade level. So again, who are we talking about? Or are we just navigating the conversation in a way that avoids acknowledging or pointing out women's participation? Also, the biggest issue is this assumption that Black men have a monopoly on abuse. To the points that I made earlier, men and women are bad people. Men are, in a sense, to the point the brother in the last video made, men are in a sense rewarded for being bad people as it relates to like upward mobility and capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. Women are insulated when they're bad people, which is such an insidious thing. Like we've seen the thin lines between love and hate. Some of us have experienced it in real life. But when it comes to this narrative, we pretend the abuse is always Black men, or it's always men. It's always Black men in particular, without considering the millions of men who are abused all the time. But it's such an insidious thing because you aren't even given the permission or the vocabulary to conceptualize yourself as being capable of being abused as a man. And the very people who are begging you to be more expressive don't want that to change. Because I want you to be honest until your honesty is about me. Two things I agree with that he said, and then I'll kind of wrap this up because I think I've rambled enough. One of the things that I hope I've done a decent job trying to articulate during the Kevin Samuels series or during the Yellow Flag series, the podcast, all the series and stuff that I've done is that it's all about agency. I think that we can have conversations with nuance, of course, to like unpack or peel the onion that is our dysfunction. But the best way to go about it is, what can I do better? And for me, as an example, like one of the things that I've kind of like come to terms with recently is, you'll be in situations where you expect people to do things that make sense to you or that you would do if you were in their shoes. When the real reality is that the reason why you ended up in the situation with those people is because you didn't have, or you hadn't built or established the confidence to go after the people that you claimed you wanted. So instead, you create discount relationships, right? So I want, and it's similar to what women do, right? I want a doctor. I don't think I'm good enough for a doctor. So I'm going to get this street nigga and try to inspire him to go to med school. So later down the line, I pretty much got like a doctor on sale. And men in particular do that far more than we realize. And you know, like I said, the human psyche needs it needs incentives. So we create these incentives that are then perpetuated by cultural narratives. Crazy women got the best pussy, and if she loves you, she'll be crazy. If your dick is good, she'll be crazy about you. And you know, it's the women who held it down and don't say much and all that good stuff. Those are the best women. When the reality is, you do not believe that you are qualified for what you really want. And a part of you is unwilling or feels unworthy of what you really want, or doing the work to become the person, to my resume analogy, who is qualified for what they really want. And that's something I had to kind of reflect on. So for the men who are frustrated with women, consider that. There's some great women out there. There's some fantastic black women out there. Some of them are in America, some of them are not. Let's just keep it a buck. Black women who are frustrated with black men, there are some fantastic black men out there. But maybe the environments that you move around are not the same environments those black men are in. Maybe the friends that you keep, the habits that you maintain, are not consistent with the lifestyles that those black men are curating. Maybe the idea or the Frankenstein that you've put together in your head of the other attributes that accompany him, a street nigga with a 401k, maybe that's unreasonable. Maybe 401k dudes do 401k do things like go to the country club and develop their network and are at conferences and things like that, and don't really drink, don't smoke. Whereas a street dude, he drinks and he smokes. But you, because you're a woman and you're every woman, you're a bit of both. So you're looking for a bit of both. You're a lawyer, but you do ecstasy every weekend. So like you want a man who is equally successful and degenerate, so you don't have to feel bad about yourself, as opposed to deciding to go one way or the other with your own personal resume. So I say all that to say, in that pattern of incentives that we follow and that we create for others, a better model, and this is where Deante and I align, is you do things for yourself. You do good things for yourself. Kindness is an extension of yourself. I didn't give her that money or help her with this thing or help him with this thing because I'm expecting something in return. Now, the version of me that I want to be would do this and wouldn't do it in a simping way of just giving out money because I didn't work hard for it, but in a way that like is beneficial and is a greater good for my community, for my family, whatever the case may be. So even if I lose it, I ain't tripping. She's better off. He's better off because of it. Now, I'm not talking about simping. That's a different thing altogether. That is a transactional. I'm putting money in this savings account, this pussy savings account, and eventually it's going to yield. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like kindness, extension of yourself. You should view it as a selfish act of cultivating and refining the type of person that you want to be. And I'm talking to myself, as opposed to trying to incentivize the other person to live up to your expectations. Sometimes your made up expectations of who you think they're capable of being. Yeah, I said a lot. I hope I said some good shit. Appreciate y'all listening. I actually went over time. We're at 2 hours. So, like I said, hit my IG DMs. I'm gonna try to find some good clips to expand this conversation to the masses. But I would thoroughly enjoy and appreciate if you guys helped me in that process. Instagram is at WNT Talk. But yeah, I think, or I'll say this in closing. I hope. Yeah, I'm on TikTok too. Yep, but I don't really use TikTok, man. I don't know. Like I said, I'm one guy. So if somebody wants to run the TikTok, hit me up too. I'll let you run it. I hope that Deante Kyle's intentions are pure. I hope that his concern for investment in the community is authentic. And I hope he's going about it in a sustainable way. And I hope that his rhetoric is balanced and nuanced and considerate about the complexity of our intergender dilemma. And I hope that the bad bitches who are listening to him, per the thumbnail, also keep listening when he critiques them. If he critiques them, he should critique them. Because these sons that turn out to be these men that he's complaining about came through a woman. Right? And if we are going to take every precaution to acknowledge the great woman who birthed this great man, or the great women who are standing behind or beside this great man when he does some great shit, we must also acknowledge the shitty women who birth these shitty men, and the shitty women who stand behind and beside these shitty men when they do shitty shit. Because if we're not doing that, we're either saying, oh, women are toddlers and they are inconsequential in the process of community establishment, development, and sustaining, or we're lying. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, hit the DM. Thank you for all the super chats. As a matter of fact, I didn't even go through the super chats. Let me see. I gotta at least shout y'all out. All right, so this one, Psychonaut. He said, let's start it off strong. Appreciate you, brother. We got the Lucid Experience to keep the stream going. Appreciate you. I don't think we hit our goal, but the support is absolutely appreciated. You could also hit us on Cash App. It's at WNT Talk, or cash sign WNT Talk. Support me there. Greatly appreciate it. Brittany, I'm sorry, I missed Brittany. Brittany with the $9 super sticker. Just love, appreciate you. Cook, appreciate what you do, brother. I appreciate you, man. Circle of Pharaohs, thank you. Charles Johnson, thank you. Says keep up the great work. Wrench Turner, always, brother. IHBNLB. Your work on black male-female relationships is critical. Crucial. I really hope that's not a word and I don't know the word. But yeah, appreciate you, brother. Let's see. 689 says tithes and offerings. Appreciate you. Trey Money V. Just paying my time to the church. Keep preaching, bro. Thank you, man. Thank you. Michael Johnson. I introduced Tommy Curry into a conversation and refute a sister's claim once. She had no idea who he was. That's how one-sided these conversations are. They don't even know competent opposition. Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but I think in as much as there's not a demand or there's not the appropriate curiosity among the female delegation. I also do think, and this was my critique of the manosphere at one point, that we spent too much valuable time playing in the mud, and I think that it does ourselves a disservice, right? Like, there's no reason Fresh and Fit Stream should pull in more people than Dr. Tia-san. There's just no reason, right? There's no reason people should know Myron but not Warren Farrell. There's no reason, right? But we can't expect the world macro to take our concerns seriously if we don't position them seriously. That was my critique of the manosphere. That was my critique of like Just Pearl, her grifting growth on YouTube. So to my earlier point, we play a part. We play a part in it too. Michael Jordan also said, what is the resolution when nuance is weaponized and one-sided? Nuance is off the table when dealing with black male pathologizing. Yeah. That's again, that's kind of like the core of my point is it's layered, because you can only really expect empathy insofar as you're able to empathize with self. And part of men's precarious position is that we in order to be effective as men, we've been taught to not empathize. And they're not empathize with ourselves, and it's dare I say, impossible to separate being effective as a man and also empathizing with self, right? Like it's a very fine line to walk. So women haven't been taught how to empathize with men. They've been taught how to fake it. They've been taught how to seem like they are, but they haven't actually been taught how to do it. So, that's why I hope this new type of conversation is introducing it to them, and the best amongst them can kind of like, are now given the opportunity to be like, oh shit, I didn't know. Right. Which is why we have to be responsible with it. We have to be responsible because I mean, the reality too is like we, as men for so long, we've also taken pride in our ability to, and we, in our community, it's called John Henryism, our ability to bear and work and be effective despite how we feel. Even in the sports world, it's, no pain, no gain. Despite how we feel, despite what's going on, you are a man as far as your ability to persevere, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Team Buck, love, peace, and blessings. Balance is key. Absolutely. But again, I won't hold y'all up any further. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. Hit the DM if you got any reasonable clips from this or sound bites, or you just want to, bring something up. Thank you guys so much. Peace. Y'all have a great weekend.